we have got Mama's on, so we're going to go ahead and start. I'm very excited today to get to do another post about music. Last week we did nature study, which is one of my favorite topics, but really I started thinking about this last night. What is there not to love about poetry, storytelling, art, music, nature study? Those 5 things are some of my favorite things in the world, and so much fun to know that including those, really having that be the highlight and focus of your day with your children is actually the very best learning experience that you can have with them. I love that. How much fun is that to know that something that you love and that can be so natural is what is really truly the best way to teach your kiddos. So what fun for us that we get to learn a little bit more about music today. I've invited my sister-in-law, Amy Gabbitas, back. If you were here a couple weeks ago, she started with an introduction about kind of the why, kind of like a introduction to her background, her own family's history, the family that she grew up in, and then kind of what she's done with her kiddos at home, how they have music be such an integral part of their lives. So we learned about that last time so we could get an idea about who she is. And then this week, she's going to talk to us about how we incorporate music into our daily lives with our children. So I am going to turn the time over to Amy.
Now, obviously, this is a topic I love, but I want to say I watched the nature one last week, and I've used some of those ideas with my children this week. So I'm learning too, and hopefully some of the ideas we talk about today will just get you excited to try something new with your children, even if it's just one idea. Getting ready for this, I kind of tried to, it's hard to narrow such a huge topic down into usable parts because you can go forever. But I found a really good article, just 6 components of a balanced homeschool curriculum. And I've made a handout we'll send out later with links to all of these articles and books that I'm going to mention so that you can go back and look into it more if you're interested. But these are the 6 areas that it mentioned: exposure, appreciation, history, theory, lessons, and performance. And we're going to just talk a little bit about each of those and how to use it. All right, so the first part is exposure. And this is where I think people get the most scared or hung up if they haven't had a deep classical experience, because we're going to focus on classical music today. I highly believe that all kinds of music can be beneficial in your life, but we're going to just focus on classical today. And the nice classical or any music, it's something that you can enjoy from the womb all the way up to the day you die. It's something that you can keep learning and appreciating and use to your benefit. It's a whole life endeavor. And in Well-Educated Heart, she talks about making fine music familiar. That's the first step, is just to get more familiar with it. But what is fine music? And I just put this meme on. It's funny because it really, I've had these reactions from people of, society thinks it's this very snooty upscale thing that you have to be well educated to appreciate, which is a lie. Anyone can appreciate it. Kids a lot of times think, oh, it's music and a little cartoon. So there's lots of attitudes about it that hopefully we can dispel some of those myths and help you feel more comfortable in exploring and learning. So the first question, kind of a poll, I'm curious where we're coming from. One of my favorite TED Talks ever, and this is on the Well-Educated Heart website as well, is Benjamin Zander. And he talks about there's different types of people when it comes to classical music. He said there's people who can't imagine life without it. They already have a love for it. They know that they love it. People who don't mind classical music, they won't necessarily turn it off or leave a concert because they're bored. People who never listen to classical music, and then people who think they are tone deaf. So I don't know what category you might think you fall in, or maybe you've changed throughout your life. But Benjamin Zander's premise is that there's really only two kinds of people who love classical music and people who don't realize that they love it yet. It's usually just because you haven't been exposed to it enough to realize that you love it. So, and another, there's a really well-known music educator. His name is Edwin Gordon. He's written multiple books that are fascinating. And honestly, if you want to know more about a child's musical psyche, really interesting things. But he says that every human is musical and it is possible to develop this music ability. And he said most of us are just average. When we come out of the womb, we have average music ability, and then we can go from there. But everybody is musical. So this idea of, oh, I'm tone deaf, I can't appreciate it, that's actually a lie. And actually, tone deaf really isn't a thing. It's just lack of exposure. So going along with exposure, how do we expose our children? So many options here. And exposure really is just the broad, we're just introducing them to it. We're not trying to teach any concepts. We're just getting them exposed to music so that it becomes more familiar. So the first area I wanted to talk about was just music in children's shows. I chose Fantasia 2000. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that movie. There was an entire year, one of my sons, he watched it every single day during quiet time, and I was completely fine with it. The music is it's diverse. It's all classical with this great animation that just captured his attention. But other children's shows I like Little Einsteins, and all of these are available. Well, maybe not Fantasia 2000, but a lot of these shows are on YouTube. You can go watch. But Little Einsteins, they introduce a lot of just really standard classical melodies to just get kids a little bit interested, and then you can go listen to the real piece from there. I really appreciate the music in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. I just watched the documentary on Mr. Rogers' life. I didn't realize that he wrote all the music himself, and it was very intentional on helping children process feelings and emotions. It's beautiful music, and when you go into watching that show with that mindset, you'll get something different out of it. There's a lot of great music in children's shows. There's a lot of bad music in children's shows too, so you want to just kind of watch that. But they can get exposed, and even those Looney Tune cartoons that we were kind of making fun of, there is incredible classical music in those shows, and then you can springboard off of that to listening to the full pieces if you wanted to. So that's just music in children's shows. Then, so active songs, getting kids involved with musical activities. So those fun party games like hot potato and just musical chairs. Even musical chairs, you could use classical music with that. Again, you're just exposing them. You want it to be familiar enough so that if you ever did want to sit down and have a conversation with them, it wouldn't be the first time they'd ever heard that piece of music. I have a video I want to show you. This is a musical game that we play at my house pretty much anytime we have a party. It does take a little bit of skill. It's a piano game. So you'll just have to play piano a little bit to play this game. But basically, we're taking a piano. This one happens to be a 6-part piano. So piano trio, but you only get one line. Your job is to play your one and only part. But when the page turns, everyone has to shift. And it's really messy. It's not high quality performance at all. But look at the laughter going on. And they're trying to stay together. Anyway, and we tried to all shift over and play it. And the fun thing about this, we just did this game a couple weeks ago. We had a party at my house, and we were playing, and it was mostly college kids, my BYU kids. But my 14-year-old son finally felt confident enough to try and play the game with them, and he actually did okay. So it can really get those younger kids to, like, he's wanted to do it for years because he's seen this happen, and it just got him motivated to try. But it's just a funny thing to do. Play games. Part of that, you have to play games to make it fun. Other things, and also Lori, if there's comments, I don't have the comments pulled up, so jump in and let me know if I need to address the comment. Have toys playing around, and actually So that's a picture of my living room, but I wanted to show you one of the things you couldn't quite tell what they were. These are called boom whackers, and if you look at it, each stick is a different pitch. And so I have a whole scale, and we did a party once. We had friends over, and their kids could kind of read music, but we just handed each person a stick, and then we tried to play Christmas carols. And so you only have to play when it's your note. So even if you're not great at music, like say you can't play piano, usually you can get your one and only note. So it can help them learn how to read music a little bit better, or at least know, oh, that's my turn. Handbells are a good thing. I'll share the screen again so you can see these other toys that we play with. Oh, I know what I didn't do right. Hold on. You probably couldn't hear the video on that last one. Let's see. Didn't do that. Okay. All right. So in this picture, whoops.
There you go.
Okay. In that picture as well, just so I can tell you what the other things were. Like we have this old beat up guitar. It was really cheap on Amazon. A ukulele. We have recorders in every size that they can just jam on. These two things right here are called melodicas. That's where you blow in and play the keys. And that came about, and I put a link again in that handout. I don't know if you've ever heard of the melodica men. There are these two guys who are classical. One's a trombonist, one's a trumpet. And actually Joe, the trombone player I taught with at a summer camp, and he was telling me a story. He's like, I was helping clean out my grandpa's attic and found his old melodica. And he's like, I kind of stole it. I took it home and played it, and it wasn't very good. And so he graduated from college, and his parents were like, what do you want? He's like, I want a nice melodica. It's kind of considered a toy, but now that's how he makes his living. And they take classical pieces and play them on melodica and really get kids involved. They do workshops all over the world, just exposing kids to music in fun ways. They wear costumes and all that kind of thing. So I put a link to that so you can get some ideas that it can just expose them to classical music, and they're really good too. So that's how we have melodicas, and they just like to play duets. There's drums, drum set, practice pad. So just have instruments, toys that they can play with whenever they want to. And then, yeah, so then as far as exposure to, I'm kind of sad I don't have little people anymore. I spent a lot of time with babies on my lap while playing. In fact, my oldest, I was getting my master's, she would just sleep across my legs when I practiced clarinet. That was our deal every day. And I mean, because again, I played the whole time I was pregnant with her. That was her soundscape is clarinet. But this little girl, just taking them to live concerts, you need to take them to live performances. Again, I know that right now that's difficult to do, but it's important that they can go up and see it in person. But this little girl, we go to a lot of concerts because her siblings are all in band and choirs and different things. So she's been to a lot. And we just laugh because from when she was a baby, she would act out the percussion parts, and that's what she wants to play. So just what's going on stage? And so when you take your children to live concerts, it's good to prep them to know it's happened. Just some tips, because I've done this a lot. You want to choose something that they're going to be interested in. I highly recommend finding out what's on the concert, finding a children-friendly concert. There are a lot of times they'll gear it as a children's show. You don't want to take them to, say, the symphony and they're playing Mahler, that's an hour long. That's not going to be a recipe for success. But if you go to one that's billed as a children's concert, the other people in the audience will understand, wiggling little people. I think it's completely appropriate to maybe only take one or two children, not all of them, as a special outing. So this little girl who loves percussion, I took her to a percussion recital, and it was a faculty member who was retiring, and it was Ron Bruff and all of his friends. So they just played all kinds of music that whole night. And she was probably 7 years old, so a little bit little, but she was really excited about it. And she was sitting there trying to be so still during the whole concert. Like, she was trying to be very good behavior. But she kept looking at me like, can I have permission to at least tap my hand or something? Because it was really hard for her to sit still when they were just beating on all these drums. And then I looked around and all the other members of the audience were also just acting out. They couldn't sit still either. So I'm like, go for it. Happiest little child. It was a very successful outing for her to go to that concert because I chose something that she would be interested. And we went out for treats after and made it a special occasion. Having like another thing along with this is to just play games. So this is just something we do every Christmas. We do a family band. My oldest daughter, that's her present every year. She writes us a family band arrangement of something. And the rule is you can't play something you've played before in a family band. So it does not sound good because you're not allowed to play something you actually can play. And that's the point. It is just to be silly and get yourself out of, we don't take it super seriously. And this one was particularly funny because the youngest didn't really, she's like, my part's too hard. So you'll see she's just holding her clave and her brother's hitting it for her because part of it is we're learning some teamwork and how to work together as a family and problems. So she's just holding it right there. It's just silly. And you can't quite tell the trombonist, she's playing with her foot, so she can play another percussion instrument, which is just part of the fun. Anyway, so that's the exposure element of, we're not going into details or even analyzing it all. It's just about getting it out there, putting it in your environment. The next area is music appreciation, and this one is where, so it's hard sometimes to see the difference between exposure and appreciation. Appreciation is just adding a little, the next level of, let's think about what we're listening to. Let's talk about what we're hearing in the music. It's a little bit of analyzing and a little bit of reflection. Like, then we'd ask, how did it make you feel? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? So when you do take someone to a live concert, it's fine to just sit there and listen. But I've also learned if I give them some specific things to pay attention to, they're going to get more out of it. It can be as simple as, here's a piece of paper and a pencil. Can you just put a check every time you notice the tuba plays something? Or like just some really specific things. Because again, I'm not going to expect an 8-year-old to sit for an hour and not have anything to focus on and help them learn about.
Hey,
so,
Amy.
Yeah.
I put something in the comments for the mamas. I don't know if they do that there, but when things are open here during the symphony season, the symphony will open up a lunchtime concert for families, for children, and it's really a practice for them, but kids can come and watch and listen, and that's a perfect place to go and for that first introduction. Because you can come and go, you don't have to stay for the whole time. You can practice with your kiddos appropriate behavior at a concert, you know, that kind of thing. So that was our way of introducing it to our kiddos.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And we even here, the Salt Lake, the Utah Symphony, they even do one for special needs children. So they know that there's going to be outbursts in the audience and it's completely appropriate. They want it to be a successful experience for every type of family. That's the point. We want everyone to be able to enjoy it. So let's see. So here we're kind of going a little bit deeper into the music. There are many resources on helping with this. I just chose one. This was on the Well Educated Heart website. This is Leonard Bernstein, really incredible composer, conductor, and very passionate about children and introducing them to music. Let me pull this up. So he had this incredible ability to go very deep into understanding, but in a way that children can understand. And most of these are free online. You can just find them. But we'll just listen. He is introducing here the meaning of music.
For instance, if I play a note on the piano,
Kind of
just
magical.
one note, and I hold it a long time, that has no meaning at all, has it? But let's say I play the note and then I move to another note. Right away there's a meaning we can't name, a sort of stretch, a pulling, a pushing, something like that, but it's there. And the meaning is in the way those two notes move, and it makes something happen inside of you. If I move from that first note to another note, like this, the meaning changes. Something else happens inside of you. The stretch is bigger somehow and stronger. Now this note, for instance, means one thing with this chord under it. And it makes you feel a certain way. And it means something completely different with this chord under it. And it makes you feel another way. Then with this chord under it, it means something else. Or with this chord. And each way, each different chord makes you feel a different way. Now, what about these notes? Do you know what these notes are? What's that? Right, okay. Well, now they mean something exciting and spooky is going to happen, like Dragnet. But if I take the same notes and just play them in a different way, they'll mean something else. Silly, just light and silly. And they're the same notes. So you see, the meaning of music is in music. It's in the melodies and the rhythms and the harmonies and the way it's orchestrated. And most important of all, in the way it develops itself. But that's a whole other program. We'll talk about that some other time. Right now, all you have to know is that music has its own meanings right there for you to find.
Anyway, that's just a little taste of what his series talks about, and he gets so excited about sharing this love of music with children. And recently I found this book. I think I got it at a library book sale. This is his book talking about all of that children's series. So I've started reading through it. And again, I'm just amazed at how deep he goes, but at an understandable level. So even as an adult, if you feel a little bit put off by classical music because you haven't been exposed, this could be a fun place to start to understand a little bit better of what he is talking about. So just last week, I had a conversation with my daughter that I couldn't have planned better for this presentation. Whoops, wrong one. So we were just sitting eating breakfast one Sunday morning, and I had some classical music playing in the background, and she just blurted out, she's like, I don't like classical music. And which is almost a bad word at our house. I don't know. I'm like, what? But I didn't react. I was just like, oh, really? That's interesting. Huh? Can you think of any classical music that you like at all? And she thought about it, and she's like, I like John Williams, which is funny because not all classical musicians consider John Williams a classical composer. He's a film composer. I consider him a classical composer. I love what he's written. But I thought I can start there because I know that John Williams is an avid fan of classical music and he listens to it all the time, and it's definitely influenced what he's written. So I'm like, okay, I can go with this. I'm going to find her some pieces that she likes. So we're going to listen to a piece. Before I get into that, though, I wanted to put, so on Well Educated Heart's website, there are so many resources that can help you with this appreciation part of it. She lists things that go along with a lot of the lessons you're studying anyway, but there's also many, many books that, like this one, this picture of the famous symphonies, how to understand them. That's just one of the books that are linked on her website. I just wanted to put a little disclaimer out there. Sometimes the information is wrong. Like one of the ones in this particular book that I'm about to play, the symphony, he has it as the wrong title. So just know if you're read a piece and you're like, I can't find it, it might have the wrong title on that. And I'm sorry about that. Scholarship has gotten better over time. So again, I was trying to show my little girl, hey, you do like classical music? You just didn't know it. We had to find some pieces. So listen to this and see if you can figure out what John Williams movie soundtrack he probably listened to this and then wrote the movie soundtrack. So listen. All right. So does anybody know what movie that sounds like? Any ideas? Jaws, exactly, right? Isn't that funny? And I know that John Williams knew, this is Dvorak's New World Symphony, the last movement. He knew this piece and it had to have influenced him somehow. So she listened to that and she thought, that's okay. I like that. That's a good piece. And then I threw this piece at her. It also sounds like a John Williams movie. So listen to this one. And it starts quiet. Sorry about that. Anyway, there's documentation, yes, Star Wars in the Imperial March. So there's documentation that John Williams has acknowledged, hey, the planets influenced my Star Wars soundtrack, which is fascinating and interesting. So she's like, okay, I do like classical music. I just don't like the boring classical music. And the funny thing, when I had Mars playing, then her older sister came running in and she just said, hey, that's Mars from the Planet. I love that piece. And the reason she loves that piece is because I had taken her to see a live concert of that a few years before, just as she had started playing trombone, because I wanted to take her to a live concert that featured the trombone so she could get an up-close view of what that instrument could do. And for that concert that I took her to, I let her take a friend. It was about an hour away from our house. I was performing in it, but so she got to go with a friend. We talked about the piece driving out there so they knew what to listen for. We probably went out for treats after and made it a party, but they had a really good experience and it influenced her. And then after the concert, I noticed that it was on her playlist. And so I heard her listen to it almost every day for about a year after going to that live concert. So the trombone daughter, she loves The Planets, one of her favorite pieces. And now her little sister realizes, oh, I do like classical music. So that's just a funny conversation that you might have something similar. Okay, going on, another, one last idea for that appreciation part of it that this was in Well-Educated Heart. She suggested inviting a musician to come in and perform in your home. And that lets you have that instrumentalist up close and personal with your children. She's like, invite them for dinner. Especially college students who need some more performing opportunities, they might really be willing to do that for you, to just come in and practice a piece that they need to get ready for performance and have them play it for your children. And then your children can ask them questions and really see up close and personal. I do this sometimes with my kids. I haven't had them into my home, but I took, again, the trombone daughter, I took her to a concert and she was really impressed. There was a trombone soloist and she even recorded the song he played on her phone and renamed it Trombone Heaven because she thought it was so beautiful. And it happened to be a student I knew. And so I said, hey, Danny, would you give my daughter a lesson? He's like, yeah, happy to do it. So they had a lesson and so she had to be up close and personal with trombone heaven boy, and it inspired her to try a little harder and practice a little bit harder. Okay, so music history. This is an interesting area. I want to show you. So I used to hate music history, and that's because my experience was the purely academic kind that most classical musicians have to go through. And this was my textbook for 2 years worth of music history classes. And all we would do we were supposed to read. I clearly didn't, because I bought this book used and didn't even realize that it was missing 100 pages of it, because clearly I didn't do all of my reading. So that's how it was. Every time I'd open to read it, I would fall asleep every single time. It was that boring. And basically we just had to memorize dates and names and places. It didn't speak to me at all. I didn't see the connection of understanding the history with the music I was trying to perform. It didn't make sense to me at all. And that's unfortunate, because now I love music history, because luckily I've had some better experiences than that. But we just need to remember, music has been around for all of humanity. From the very beginning of time, we've had music. And the more advanced a civilization becomes, the more music, more art, more literature that comes from it, and it becomes a reflection of society. So it's just one lens to understand humanity in a deeper way. And when we remember that, it makes music history a lot more interesting than facts and dates. It's so boring. And again, on the well-educated heart, there's so many resources already put together for you that you're studying a time frame. You can go in and listen to music from that time frame and learn stories from it. She in particular really liked these 2 series, the Patrick Kavanagh Spiritual Lives of the Great Composers, and then this one, again, it's on the handout. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's just little biographies about different classical composers. But I want to say, so I got to take 2 music history classes, and this last time I went to school. One of them was just a seminar where each week we studied a different topic in history, which meant instead of trying to memorize hundreds of years worth of facts, we would just study one particular topic. Like one week we studied the 100th birthday celebration of Haydn in the Austrian Empire. It was very specific, but I learned that all of the cities in the Austrian Empire on the 100th birthday of Haydn put on a concert that included fireworks, and they played the same pieces. And the point was to bring unity to the country. If you think about that time, it's not like they had internet or radio or telephones or anything like that, but it was something everyone looked forward to, and that they knew on this particular day, that's something that was happening throughout their country. It was fascinating. Another topic we studied in that class was musical theater in the United States. And it turned out to be a great bonding experience with me and my daughter, who knows Hamilton, the musical, backwards and forwards. And that was something I had to write a little paper about. So I got a 3-hour overview from her on Hamilton and what it meant historically. It was a really good conversation with my daughter. I learned a lot. And it was much more interesting, again, than just trying to memorize facts. But the best class, music history class I took it was called Jazz and Jim Crow Laws. And I love US history. I really, really love US history. And so to look at jazz, and I love jazz, so looking at those two together and how they interacted and influenced each other just gave me an incredible appreciation for what those musicians had to go through, the struggles they had, and appreciating what beauty they were able to create out of very difficult circumstances. So they're studying the history can be an incredibly spiritual and uplifting activity that can add a lot of depth to your understanding of classical music. So this is just one story from music history that I thought would be interesting. This is Leonard Bernstein again. I do like him. And the piece is called March Slav. It's a Tchaikovsky piece. And I mean, Tchaikovsky's a great composer and kids tend to love his music. And this is just a fun little piece. And I don't think he meant it to be a really intense piece. It was just like, oh, here's a nice little 12-minute overview thing. I think it sounds almost like a Sousa march, but Russian style. The problem with it was he included the Russian national anthem in part of it. Well, under communist rule, they declared that no one can play the Russian national anthem. So whenever this piece was performed during the communist era, they had to take out the Russian national anthem. So I'm going to skip ahead to where the anthem goes dun 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 dun. Anyway, so listen, it starts like happy. Again, it sounds kind of like it's too much. So you want to listen to the first a little bit, but that is the national anthem. Imagine what this piece would sound like without the anthem right there, because that's such a powerful climax moment of the piece. Those are the type of things that I think are fascinating about music history of, oh, free speech. That was, they cut it out and there are things that they couldn't do. So there's so many directions you can go with the history that are interesting. Another area of study is music theory. So up until now, those first three areas were just about just listening to music. It didn't take any skill or even particularly a lot of knowledge. But then we get into this music theory portion, and this is where you have to start learning details. I look at it this way. When we try to teach children how to read and be literate, it's just this immersion. We read to them when they're tiny babies before they can possibly even understand what words were. And we just create their environment, have good books lying around that they can touch and feel and be part of. And then when they get a little older is when we start to introduce, here are the letters, here are the sounds they make, here's the phonics, and you can form words. And that's what theory is. It's, okay, now you understand the soundscape, you have an idea of what it sounds like, and you understand that portion of it. Now we're going to get into what all those little dots and things mean on the page so that you can start creating your own music. And so there's so many different ways that we live in an era where if you want to learn music theory, go online. There are millions of games that are fun. I put some links to online games, but I also don't want to underestimate even flashcards. So I pulled out, these are just my very beginner flashcards. You can't really see them very well, but I put the letter inside of the note, and I also color coded them so that they can start by trying to match, oh, the blue notes, those are G's, okay, G, G. So this is like the very first level of flashcards I would do. And I'm actually teaching an 8-year-old clarinet lessons online right now. And this is what I had to resort to get her to start reading her notes. I'm like, what note is this? And then she's like, I can't quite read the note in there. And I'm like, but you know, the second line is a G. She's starting to get it and we're understanding it better. So flashcards are completely fine. You can also print off worksheets. Whatever learning style your child would be the most successful with, use it, change it up, do different kinds of things. Some others, and you can buy theory books at any music store or on Amazon. And those come in different formats too. So if your child needs bigger notes or happier colors, that's fine. They come in all different styles. Find something that works for you. Sorry, I forgot this. This is a book I actually do like about music history. It's the New Harvard Dictionary of Music. And this you can just look up if you have questions about a topic in music. This is short enough that you can understand it, but also explanatory enough that you will understand the topic. It makes it much more interesting. And then they have another book. This is the Biographical Dictionary of Music. And these I'm sure are also available online. You can find an online version of this that can help you understand it. If you just want a quick reference, of looking up something and finding the answer. Wikipedia also has quite a few answers, but those tend to get really long. And again, they're not always correct 100% of the time. So the new Harvard books are really helpful that way. As far as theory, it's helpful to remember that theory is not supposed to be an overwhelming, oh, that's really hard and I don't understand all of that. It really is supposed to be a tool. And if you keep that in mind, it makes it more accessible. It also, you're going to understand music a lot better, even if you just have a basic understanding of like what major and minor and how it can help you feel a different thing, or what is a cadence, like the importance of this tension release. And that's where we get our satisfaction, is after we've had this buildup and then it resolves. Or even an overview of form, like most symphonies are 4 movements long, and are they fast, slow, just basic things like that will help you understand the music better. So it is just a tool, and the more you'll understand, as with any topic in life. Anyway, and just a funny thing, my daughter and my dad both love music theory, and so every time we sing a hymn now, they will talk about chord structure and format. It's hilarious. You guys are very nerdy, but it's something they can bond over now too, and it leads to some good conversations. And theory will help you. I mean, and if you're at a level where you do understand some theory, you might, like, say you're singing in a choir, this happens all the time, and you realize, why is this part so hard to sing? A lot of times it'll be because the person who wrote the arrangement or whatever you're doing didn't understand the rules and didn't follow the rules. And then you start to see, oh, okay, that made it harder because we didn't understand how it's supposed to work. So that you can solve some problems too. Because I've done a lot of choir, I've just rewritten a couple things to tweak it and make it easier. So you can make it a tool to help with other things as well. All right, so let's see. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. The next area that they talked about were lessons and performances. So let's say you have a child who loves the appreciation part of the exposure, the history, and now is ready to do lessons. Just some tips on how to make that successful. First off, again, there are many online resources. If you're not ready to commit to taking private lessons with a teacher. For instance, this little clip right here, I really have a daughter who learned how to play Furiously in this video. Just watch it a little bit. And I'll be honest, I would never in a million years want to learn a piece that way because it takes forever, but it worked for her. And it was a piece she really was motivated to learn, so it worked. And I didn't have to do anything. She did it all on her own. So those are options. And that particular website has many songs. You can just go through and say, oh, I want to learn this. And it's just pictorial, and you just follow along and you can learn it that way. If you do decide to go with a private teacher, especially for beginners, there are a couple of things you want to look at to keep that a positive experience. And these ideas I got from this book, The Talent Code. Again, I'm putting this in my handout list. So Daniel Coyle went and studied what he called hotbeds of talent. So there was a tennis school in Russia, a baseball school in Puerto Rico, a music school here in the United States. But he looked at what the commonalities were between these different areas. And one of the things he found is that they had master teachers. So his definition of a master teacher is someone who has the ability to read a student quickly so that they can design curriculum and exercises that will match that student's ability and desire levels. They're going to match their curriculum. They're not going to just have a strict thing that they always follow. They're going to look at the individual child and match it accordingly. Then also, they usually have been teaching for 30 to 40 years. They have a lot of experience doing it. And then the third thing is that they focus on ignition. And that's the idea that we have to get this child excited about learning, because they're not going to be willing to do something hard unless they love it and appreciate it. And like piano teachers, especially beginning piano teachers, there's lots of stickers involved and maybe treats or incentives, but that's part of the process to get them really excited to learn. So if you're looking for a teacher, you want to take time to look and say, is this going to be a good fit for my child? And I just, this week, I had a homeschool mom reach out to me. I'm going to teach her daughter clarinet lessons, and through their homeschool group that they're working with, the homeschool group will pay for the lessons. So there are probably options that you might not be aware of if you want to pursue private music lessons. It's worth looking into, especially if you have a child who's really gung-ho. But I mentioned this in my last conversation, just how I really think it's a good thing to have another adult on your child's team as they're growing, to be accountable to and help them set goals and reach their potential. And then so along with lessons are performance saves. And the point of performing is just to give them an opportunity to create. So this lessons and performance part, this is about creating music and using it to bless other people's lives as well. A good performance experience is going to help them learn confidence, coping with nerves and stage fright, and just preparing them for life and greater things ahead. It also can, so as they learn how to play with other people, it's going to teach them team building experiences and problem solving things. So music isn't just about creating music, it's learning all these other skills too. So I just wanted to share this. This is, if you remember the trumpet, well, do you want to hear my trumpet story that my girls read on the last thing I talked about? This is them playing at a street fair, and now Kate plays trumpet, Belle plays trombone. And this was Belle's first kind of public solo trombone thing. She was really nervous about it, but luckily she had a good teacher that helped her feel confident enough that it would be okay. She's performing with 2 professional musicians, so she had some backup, and it was pop, you know. And it's just in a fun environment. This is just a street fair. It's not Carnegie Hall or anything like that. You can see her anxiety level go down as the performance goes on.
The second one is a song by a band called Too Many Zoos, called FWS. We need your help on this first one. So after Belle's done playing her short little thing, you're going to say, hey. Try it now. Hey! The Zombie Philharmonic, everyone. More energy. Hey!
So she gets cheered for too, to help encourage her. Anyway, so it turned out to be a successful experience for her. And the fun thing too, we went to a concert a few years after this, and they played the same song, and her eyes got big. She's like, I know this song. Yes, you do, because it's a New Orleans second line jazz song that is played all the time in that venue. So the master teacher I talked about focuses on ignition, and just to get a little deeper on what that means in particular, there's a few areas. So the first area is identity. They need to see themselves as a musical being. And like I mentioned before, we are all musical beings. We might have different skill levels, and that's okay, but we are all musical in some way. A really interesting study found that students who believe that they are good at a subject, that's their identity, achieve a greater success with less effort than students who think they are bad at that subject, regardless of what their actual initial skill level is. So if you took 100 students and and you said, we're going to study music. The students who believe they're already musicians and they're good at it are going to be much more successful in that area than those who don't think they're good. So if they've had some bad experiences, like Lori's mentioned, someone told her, you sing flat, and that kept her from even trying anymore. Instead of someone like, hey, you can sing, let's try this. And there's different ways of handling it. So you want to be really careful to not make them feel like they aren't musical. I just think that's fascinating that regardless of what their initial skill set is, if they think they're good at it, it won't take as much effort and they will get better at it. So that's part of the personal identity part of it. And then as far as social identity, that's what's going on with their family. If nobody in their family listens to classical music, they're not going to see that as part of their family identity. Their friends, what their friends are into, school groups, extracurricular activities. So if you can possibly get them involved with social things that have music as part of it. That's why I love taking my children and their friends to concerts, because it becomes this outing. But I took some of my older kids and their friends to a concert. We went, had a great time. And then on the way home, after the concert, we always talk about the concert on the drive home and go really in depth into it. And this particular concert had been all over the map as far as good performances, bad performances. And so we were really getting into it. And my daughter's friend, who's now actually a trombone major, she just laughed. She looked at us like, do you guys do this every time? And Kate just looked at her and was like, yeah, isn't this normal? This is what you do after a concert. That's just part of our identity. And her friend enjoyed it as well. So just, you can pick and choose and help set that up for success. Another part of ignition is to create a growth-based learning environment. And these concepts really apply not just to music, but to any area that you're trying to help your students in. Growth-based, this is where we emphasize you want to value effort over talent. So many times I have seen an incredibly talented, like natural gifted abilities in music. Like I'll be teaching them or I see them in different contexts. They have incredible talent, but they don't put any effort into it. And they will never be able to succeed if they don't put in the effort. So effort is much more important than talent. You want to make sure that their challenges match their skill level. And this is called zone proximal development. This is an educational term where you don't want something to be too hard. So you wouldn't want to throw a child into, here, you're going to learn Für Elise today on your first piano lesson day. That would be much too difficult. But you also don't want it to be too easy. You have to find it right in the middle, that sweet spot where they're pushed a little bit and they need a little bit of help from a teacher or a mentor, but not so hard that they give up. Part of growth-based also is to encourage self-evaluation. So especially when you're studying music, you have to be able to take a little criticism. And it's not criticism that's trying to defeat you and put you down. It's to help you learn and grow. And if they can start to self-evaluate, they will progress much more quickly. If they can hear, oh, when I played this, it sounded bad because I did this wrong and now I'm going to fix it. Another area is goal setting, helping them say, you know what, I do want to learn this piece. Now I'm going to break it down into steps. I'll learn this part this week or this part. There's so many ways to do that. And they're going to learn a lot of self-confidence of setting goals and achieving them. And then create a safe environment for learning and growth. This is where it just matters that they're not going to be crushed when something doesn't go the way they want it to. You have to give them enough support to try something. You have to be brave enough to try, and you might absolutely fail, and that's okay. That's the part that you have to make it safe to try and be able to recover if it doesn't go as well as possible. But things will go well too, and you can celebrate those. And then the last area is to encourage emotional connection. And that there's a lot of ways to do that as well. So positive performance opportunities. And by positive performance opportunities, that's kind of balancing the emotional risk with support. So that's why I don't know if you've ever been to a beginning piano recital. They're so cute because it's these little kids and some of them are so scared they can barely stand up there and say their name in the piece that they're going to play. but they're surrounded by their family who loves them and their little friends and their teacher who's been there helping them. So you want to make sure that you're supporting them no matter how it goes in that performance. And then once they do get to the level where if they end up competing, and that's a hard part of music because it does get really competitive and you do competitions and you get scored. But if you're doing those competitions, make sure that it's not just numbers, that there's actual feedback from the judges. And I see that now as I'm working with the marching band. We get scores, but the more helpful things are the judges' comments, that they'll have positive things and then ideas for what the kids can work on. Don't be that parent. I've seen this too. I've judged a lot of competitions, and afterwards, there's only one winner of a competition. And I've seen the parents who just lay into their students and like, why did you mess up here? You should have done better, which is awful. I mean, things happen in a performance. But then I've also seen the parents like, I'm so proud of you for even trying. That's something I couldn't have even done when I was your age. So as a parent, just be really careful on how you handle that situation. Be proud of them for trying. If you know anything about Brené Brown, the psychologist, she's written a lot of books, and just like you're actually in the arena doing your best, and sometimes failure is part of it, and we have to be able to grow from that as well. This goes back to just part of the growth-based learning environment. This is from one of my favorite books, Angela Duckworth's Grit, and she talks about we have a level of talent that we start with, and then we're going to multiply it by effort. So talent times effort equals skills. That's how we get skills at things. Then you take those skills and you add even more effort to it, and it really is a multiplier. That's when we get achievement. So you're not going to just go straight from talent to achievement. You will at the very beginning stages, but that effort matters immensely more than just raw talent. The sooner your children can understand that, the more successful they're going to be at anything they try in life. Other things to go along with this idea of ignition is to focus on service opportunities. So there's so many ways to do it. You could, even if it's just participating in church music, or you could go and sing in a rest home or visit a lonely neighbor and play a song for them. Music is a lovely way to be able to provide a lot of service pretty easily. My oldest daughter has gone and just volunteered at the school to help out with the high school jazz band. She's really good at jazz and she can just go and help them a little bit. And there's lots of different ways. Or my son on his mission right now, we were talking to him last night, and he's going to give some clarinet lessons to a kid in his ward who needs a little bit of help. There's lots of ways to offer service. That helps with the emotional connection of it. Make sure that you make music fun. Again, those games and things where it's just part of who you are. It should be fun. If it's not fun, you might want to reevaluate some of that. And then this idea of sacrifice. So in order to get really good at music, it takes some sacrifice, either from time or a lot of times financial sacrifice. And I think sometimes we worry about that, like, oh, can we really afford it? And it's a personal decision what you have to decide. I know for me, I had to buy my first professional clarinet, and my parents helped me find the right clarinet and a really good deal for it. But it meant a lot. I mean, I worked 2 summers to save up to buy that clarinet. And when I went to buy it, it was used from a woman who really just wanted to make sure that someone was going to use it. She had me audition for her, and she gave me an even better deal because she was impressed that I had to pay for it myself. But it really meant a lot to me. And I definitely treated that clarinet better because I had to do that personal sacrifice to get it myself. So sometimes the sacrifice is there, but a lot of it is time and effort. Those sacrifices will make it more meaningful. And then I'm just checking. Ooh, there's comments. I'm just checking the comments to see. Yeah, I am talking about you as well. So as a family, you might have to sit down and decide what are we willing to invest to make this be more of our lives? And what kind of time am I willing to put into it? In conclusion, I again, music can add so much depth and connection in your family, and that's like the main takeaway I hope you get from everything I've said, is use it to help your family to become closer and draw together and create a better environment. That's a lot of the Well-Educated Heart. That's what she's talking about. Is, in fact, she has a quote that says, "Parents cannot force children to be musical, but they can increase the chance that they will have a positive experience when they focus on teaching them self-efficacy and provide a positive social and emotional environment." And we want to do that. And the best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limit in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. So helping them have the opportunity to stretch, but also bond together. So I just wanted to end. This is my family. These are my siblings. And when I spoke to you at first, I talked about I had this handicapped brother who couldn't ever talk, but he loved music. And when we had family band practice, he would run around in circles or lay on the floor because he loved the vibrations that he could feel in his body. Well, he died last year. And so for his funeral, we knew we would put a lot of music in there because that was how we connected with him and communicated with him because he couldn't talk. And we did the funeral at the mortuary because we wanted to have a band, and that was harder to do at the church. And also because Disney music was his absolute favorite genre of music. And so we did a bunch of Disney songs. The first little clip I'm going to play for you, if you know the song Baby Mine from Dumbo. Dumbo is an elephant. So we decided to have my tuba playing brother play the melody. And my poor mother, she was conducting the music. She was sobbing because we were playing her this lullaby. Anyways, so that was just one thing that we're able to do. And a little bit about my family. We live all over the country, Florida, North Carolina, Seattle, San Diego, and Utah. So to get ready for this, we kind of had a chat and decided what songs we wanted. And then each of us were in charge of putting together the arrangement for that piece. My son actually did the Baby Mine one. And then another thing we did a lot growing up that my brother, again, loved, we sang a lot in church. And this is a clip of a hymn, not the Lord bless you and keep you, God So Loved the World. We sing this quite a bit. And the interesting thing about this, now I have siblings who have, they are not faithful at this time, but when we sing this song, we have never been closer as siblings as we got at the funeral. And now since then, it just softened a lot of hearts and brought us a lot closer together. So this is just a little bit of that hymn. Oh. Anyways, so my thoughts here are just, I'm grateful I grew up in a home where we were never told that we couldn't do something musically. We were stretched to try new things all the time. We were given a lot of freedom in whatever direction we wanted to go to. My parents were extremely supportive of helping us, like even if they couldn't afford an instrument, again, they would help us either find a job or find a good deal on something. There's so many creative ways to problem solve to make this happen. But the biggest takeaway is that it really has kept my family together. If you knew the personalities in my family, like there's times I'm like, I can't believe we're such good friends because we're so different in our personalities and what we want to do in our lives. But music is a language that we can share. And so again, the best moments occur when you're stretched, you're in your body and your mind and you use your voluntary effort to try. And as a parent, if you can instigate some of those moments, consider yourself successful. But that's really all you can do. It's provide the opportunity and see where they go from there. Yeah, it was fun. And we ended with Pirate's Life for Me. So his funeral. It was a big Disney medley and it was a blast. Like that's the way he would have wanted to go, is just happy music. That was his thing. Anyway, any questions or like things you want to know more about, or just direction of what people need to know, where to start, where to go next?
Yeah, we remember it takes a while to think, form your question, be brave enough to talk. But this is a safe place where people can ask questions. There are no dumb questions.
I know. I'm going back and reading these comments of, we hired a college student to come play one of my husband's favorite composer's music for his birthday. I hired someone once to come play horn duets with my husband for his birthday. He's like, no, I'm like, yeah, you wanted to play horn duets. So happy birthday. Here you go.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm sure he loved it.
He did.
It's mostly all me.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi. I look just like I've been cleaning a house.
Beautiful.
I have kids my kids love music because I've been super gentle with it because I didn't want them to have any bad experiences. So I've only just kind of done like what you said, taken them to live performances and just had really good experiences with them so far. But I can tell that they want to play instruments. None of them have really tried yet. I mean, they've had little bits. Michael was teaching Lincoln the ukulele for a little bit. So anyways, but they give up really quickly. Like it's too hard. So they want to do it, but they don't want to put the work in. So how do I encourage them to do it?
So I tell every parent, it's only 1 in 100 kids that likes to practice from the beginning. It is going to be a struggle for 2 to 3 years, if not longer, if that makes sense. My kids included, none of them particularly love piano at first. That's the reality of it. We kind of set it up as you learn how to read, you learn how to do math, and you learn how to play piano. Those are all required, barring like some catastrophic brain injury or something that makes it so you can't. So, I mean, just kind of like how they have to do chores too, and do that. This is what we do. We don't have to be incredibly great at it, but that's part of it. So that's one way. Again, focusing on all those ignition things, the more you can get them to love it and make sure that they're having happy experiences while they're going through the hard stuff, that's a good thing too. One advice I got from a mom, and this is for everything, if you focus on those older children and get them to do it, it will be easier for the younger ones. So there are many times where my older 2 children have sat down with the younger ones and said, you don't like it right now, but you will be very grateful that you learned how to do this. So I'm like, thanks guys for taking that off of me. And so stick with it. consistency.
Okay.
Just knowing that it takes 2 to 3 years of sticking with it before they're gonna like it. Like before,
Okay.
because they can't really do anything. The piano, like those beginning songs, there's not a lot. It's really simple and it doesn't sound like great music yet. Watch the Benjamin Zander video that I'm sending the link for, because he kind of addresses that too. He's like, first year players sound like this, and he plays it like a beginning piano player. And he's so
Yes, I love that part. And
yeah, he just it's
becoming a one butt cheek player, like
yes, exactly, the one buttocks player. But it's so true. But I think it helps too to bring in other people who've been through it, like older kids that they might look up to, even just someone a few years older who's gone through it, and have them say, you know what, this is really hard. And I don't love it every minute of the day. But I was talking to my oldest daughter yesterday. She's like, Mom, what do you do on days you don't feel like practicing? I'm like, I just do it. That's part of the routine. I might not do it as long as I would on a day that I really want to practice. I still practice every day. And that's part of it too. Like sometimes we just do things we don't feel like doing because it's good for us and we want to learn the skill. And that whole formula of talent times effort, they have to put in the effort. But that's too, like,
okay.
helping them set goals. That's part of it as well. Is, well, do you want to play this song? If you want to play the song, here's the steps we have to do to get there. It's life skills. It's hard, but only 1 in 100 kids likes to practice. I guarantee it. Maybe even less than that. So,
Yeah.
And that's a good thing to know. That's a super helpful thing for parents to know that. So they know that's not an odd thing that their kids don't want to practice, that that's just not something that's inherent in us, you know.
Yeah.
And then I put a few comments in the chat again.
Yeah.
So I've been trying those things, inspiring them. So I took lessons, I practiced, but nothing's really making them want to go, I really want to do that. So
well, and I was
I'm
going to share too with my kiddos, because ours was the same thing. You're going to learn piano. That's just because I didn't have a piano growing up and wanted to play. I would have probably not wanted to practice either, you know, but I thought, I am so sad that I don't play now, and they will be so happy. One day they will be so grateful that I made them take lessons, you know, but still they weren't practicing. So I was praying about it and got this inspiration, and it worked for us. So I'm just going to share it. It worked for us, and you know, pray and get your own. But for us, it was, I just sat down, I talked to him and I said, okay, this is the deal. You're taking piano lessons no matter what. That's just part of the thing you're going to do the whole time that you're here at home. And, but if you practice every day, we'll pay for the piano lessons, you know, and if you don't, then you'll pay for the piano lessons. So you're going to have them anyway. They're going to happen anyway. And it'll either, you know, come out of your allowance or extra jobs that you do around the house or whatever. But we are happy to pay. We would love to pay. We would love it if you practice, and then we'll pay. But any of the days you don't practice, this is the amount of money that you owe this week for your lessons. And it was brilliant. I mean, it worked beautifully.
And a lot of parents will say, you know, there's no friend time, there's no screen time, there's no anything till you've practiced your allotted time each day. I do not like the time limit. I just say you have to hit what your goals are, like your practice objectives for the day. Once you've done that, you're free to go. So you can choose to sit on the piano bench and pout for the first 30 minutes if you want to, but you're not done until you've actually practiced what you're supposed to. Or you can have a good attitude and go do it and be done in 20 minutes. It's your choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to stick with it at first. It really is. But also, again, if you have the older kids on board, that makes it a lot easier. We've also learned, make it fun. So it's more of, are they doing it consistently? And that's why the melodicas have made a big difference, because for some reason it's more fun to practice your piano on a melodica, even though you're learning the same thing. It's
right.
And fun.
Well, there's something about blowing on that thing that makes, and that you can just hold it in your hands. We have one of those too.
Yeah, and so like this last Sunday, my middle two kids were playing primary song duets, and they played the prelude for home church, and it was funny. And it got to the point my husband's like, "This is not reverence." I'm like, "Who cares? They're playing, they're having a great time. It's primary song." And so we're like, "Okay, tone it down for the sacrament hymn." We even let them do that on melodica because they were able to make it more reverent and fine. So be flexible on that. Make it good. But sometimes it's good to have goals of, we're going to go play for grandma. It would be nice if you played something nice for that and we're prepared. There's a lot of direction, but just remember, they're not going to like it at first. That means they're normal. That's a normal thing to not like practicing. And yeah, sometimes you don't want to practice. You don't feel like it. Just like sometimes you don't want to eat your vegetables or exercise. That's okay. We still do it anyway because it's good for us.
That's such a good point. And it's a huge thing for them to watch us being consistent and watch us doing hard things. That's part of it too.
Yeah.
And then just the inspiration, exposure, lots and lots of exposure to music that is inspiring and music that they love, and people playing instruments that they can be in person is just incredible. So I really love the idea of inviting people into your home who play an instrument. And we know a lot of those people, and just invite them in and tell them what you're doing. Most of the time people will come because they will love the opportunity to come and play their instrument for somebody who wants to hear them, and then you can offer, treats or dessert, something they can take with them, something like that. But for your kids to sit there with a person playing an instrument right in front of them and maybe talking to them a little bit about it, that's the thing that gets them and keeps them inspired. You may have to occasionally bring another person in just to keep that inspiration there, but playing music and watching some of these fun videos that are talking about music and talking about playing, or even I was going to try to figure out how to show it, but I don't know how to do that. But the line writer, have your kids watched line writer?
My kids love it. They watch it all the time. They love it, especially when they fly off the end and they go, yeah.
Just funny things that can introduce them to it. But really, it's discipline. And we would talk to our kids about it and say, discipline is part of your life. You're going to need to learn that. Your life's going to be so much easier once you do. And it's self-discipline. It's hard. We were just having conversations last night because Michael's teaching piano to an adult. Sarah's teaching piano to 2 children. One who has a great desire and motivation is probably one of those 1 of 100, who wants to practice, and the other one wants to play the piano today, but, has no interest in practicing or paying attention or anything, and what a difference that is for the teacher, on that side of it too. So it's a process, and it's one that if you can keep working with them, with your kiddos, and keep praying to find out what the inspiration is for you and yours, it'll be such a blessing to them, for them to have music. We had a concert the last couple of Sunday evenings. We had a jazz concert because 2 different, one week was one of my kids and the other was another one that were playing the piano. So they were playing jazz piano, and then Michael brought down just one of his drums and the little brush, the brushes, whatever that, and so Michael's playing the brushes, on the drums, and Sarah and then Kate were playing, or Stevie were playing the piano. And it was so much fun just listening to that. What I'm going to miss so much is my kiddos when they leave, because they're in playing the piano. And we have one who loves classical music, and that's what she plays all the time. Another one who loves show soundtracks, movie soundtracks and things like that, plays that all the time. A son who plays jazz, that's his thing. And now he's doing interpretive jazz. And he's the one that comes in and lays down tracks, playing all the different instruments. And like he did one the other day, he found this famous piano player, and I can't remember who it is, but it was a trio. And so Michael decides to play their trio piece, and he puts down a drum track on it. So now we have this recording. Now it's a quartet with Michael Navitas featured on the drums. Anyway, and then my oldest one, he just likes messing around with all kinds of music. But I'm now learning to play, because once they leave, there's going to be nobody, and we're not going to have music, live music in our house anymore, you know. But I'm sorry, I wanted to go back to adding, bring in those fun instruments, keep doing the fun instruments, because that keeps their desire to play music alive, you know, while you're trying to figure out how to get the whole lesson thing worked out.
And another thing that might help that we're learning too, if they can play duets with someone else in the family. So there's so many options. You can start with a book that will have a really beginning part. And actually the Inside in October is a perfect example. There's a piano duet in the October Inside that it's a beginning piano part. It's just the melody for Come Follow Me. And then the teacher part, or the second part, is a little bit more complicated and makes it really beautiful for them to just be playing the melody. And so that's the primary, because my youngest daughter, in her piano lessons, we learn a primary song each month, and it's usually the one that's in the friend for that month. But this one was nice that they added a duet part. And so for her practice each day, I just sit down and play that part with her, and it's motivation to her to practice. Like, it's fun to do it with somebody else, that social connection part of it. But we have lots of piano duet books. But I joke that's how my kid learned how to sight read, because we have this Star Wars duet book that is actually really hard. But that's how my older two got really good at sight reading, because they just wanted to play every song in that book. And it was hard for them, but they didn't complain about it being hard, because they were really motivated to learn these songs that they love. So you find out what they want to be able to play, and that will help also with their enthusiasm for it. But also letting the music part of play. One story I forgot to share that I was going to share, when my kids were really little, they loved to do imaginary games, and they'd be making up stories, and they'd be spies and do all that kind of stuff. And my mom was babysitting them one time. They're like, Grandma, we need some background music. Can you play some stuff on the piano? And my mom doesn't play piano. She's like, I can't make up a song. So then the 6-year-old just went over and started, she's like, it needs to be minor because it's sad and scary right now in this part. And she didn't really know what she was doing, but she thought she did. She had a whole soundtrack in her head that she just made up on the piano. So again, if you have those instruments available for it to become part of their lives, and they can use it as a tool to help with their make-believe game, that's a start. And she's a lot more interested than in her piano books, like, we're learning a spooky song. Here's how you actually play a spooky song. They'll get there. It just takes constant, and you have to stick to it too. That's the hard part as the parent. Like, I'm the one at the end of the day that's like, no, you really have to practice. That's just the way it is. It's very rare. Like, my mom jokes, she didn't have to make any of us practice. She'd have to make us stop practicing. And she realized that was weird. Like, that was just weird, because normally she had to make us practice piano. But once we got to our real instruments, what we really play, she didn't have to make us practice anymore. But piano is the best place to start if they want to play anything. If they can even just do 1 year of piano, that will make everything else easier. It'll make singing easier. Any band instrument, orchestra instrument, they need to understand piano a little bit, and it will make their lives easier. It's worth it.
That answers I was going to ask that question. Do they need to start with piano? Because I have one boy, he's only 7, but he wants to learn to play the fiddle, which is the violin, right? But he loves Little House on the Prairie and anything like cowboy. And so he just wants to play the fiddle, but I don't even know where to begin with that. So I didn't know if I should have him start with the piano. And I don't even know.
I highly recommend it. It's hard not to. It's doable. I know a lot of people do it without piano first, but it makes it easier if they start on piano.
And he could have a violin and just, you let him play it all the time. And he can play songs and make up songs, and in the meantime,
Yeah, so that's all we've been doing. He just has it. It's blue, because that makes it way more fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think Ida has a comment too.
Yeah.
So I was listening to the thing about music from Marlene, and she talked about, like, whether we should say you have to do this, and she thinks no, we shouldn't force kids, but she's not against incentivizing things. So saying, like, if you read, I'll give you 10 cents per page of a book that you read, or whatever, and helping encourage them. And she talked about how her, if your child's interested in learning about music, and you say, okay, well, there's going to come a time when it's hard, and what are we going to do to get through that? We're going to, how are we going to continue through that, time that it's challenging and you don't want to, I'm very, like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I feel like, so my two oldest took piano lessons for probably about a year or so before we moved to Texas, where we are now. And sometimes they were excited about it and sometimes they weren't. And they had a pretty good teacher, and she did a lot of things to try to encourage them. And one of the things that I told her was, I'm not going to force them to practice piano. I'm just not going to do it. So if you encourage them as a teacher and try to incentivize that, or however you want to do that, if they're excited about it, I will continue to have them taking piano lessons. But if they're not excited about it and they don't want to practice, I'm not going to force them to do it. And they did pretty good. I mean, I wasn't like just completely like, I don't care. I would encourage them to some extent, but I didn't like force the issue. But my thinking on this is it really essential that we all become really good at playing music? Like, is that important? Or should it be just something that we should all have a great appreciation for and understand better? Like, I mean, like reading is something that if you don't force it, it comes naturally to people, right? They can learn to read without being sat down and told them they have to read. They can learn math without being forced to do math. And so I feel like if your child is, like in your case, Amy, like you talked about, your mom would have to keep you from practicing. If that is something that is truly your gift and something that you have a passion for, that it will be like that. It will be something that your child is like, I want to do this. I want to learn this. And, there might still be times when it's hard, and you can sort of encourage that, but it won't be like, you have to learn this, like, that's just my thinking about it. But I don't know, like my kids, I want them to love music and to understand it, and I want them to be able to sing and have some understanding of how that works and all of that. But I don't want them to feel like I'm shoving it down their throats, just like any other part of education, like, that's important and valuable. I want to try to inspire them as much as I can instead of requiring it. But I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
I think it's really important to look at each individual situation and pray about what's the right answer for you, because I agree with you. Not everyone needs to be a concert pianist. I'm not a concert pianist. So kind of what your family goals are, what you want, what you think is successful for your situation. And that's completely fine. I think the bigger thing is, do they understand music in any way? Have they been exposed to it? And is it a positive influence on their life? How that happens in your life is going to be unique to your circumstances. And if the daily battle, because sometimes it is a battle of getting them to practice, is not what you should be doing right now, that's completely appropriate and completely fine. Like, it's going to be different for each person and each family. And it's good to be aware of that. Like, what are my goals? What are their goals? How do we want to make that work? One other tip for practicing, I was just gonna say, this works with younger kids and even the older ones. Even something as simple as we'll take chocolate chips, and if they have to repeat enough times for something, like, this is really simple, but we'll put 5 chocolate chips on the piano music holder, and every time they play it correctly, it slides over to the other side. And then if they mess up, it all goes back to the beginning and they have to try again. So you have to do it 5 times in a row perfectly. And then they get the chocolate chips, and it's amazing how hard a child will work for those 5 chocolate chips. And and I see that in my marching band sectionals. We have a little competition each week that they have to do some warm-ups on their own every day, and whatever team earns the most points gets a treat. And it's usually just like a fun size candy bar. It's nothing major, but there's just that acknowledgement of, hey, I did this and I tried something. They don't have to be big incentives. It can be little, but you'll figure out what works for that child and what their incentives are. And that's part of the fun of it. Like what works, what motivates this child, because that will work in anything else you're trying to get them to do as well. That's part of parenting too. How do I get this child to stay on task and do what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, and I probably should clarify on my thing. My tip for getting your kids to play piano is if your family culture is that you want piano lesson, piano playing, that's something that your kids want and that you've decided is important, for them to do. I'm not saying that every family should do that at all, but if you are doing that, that could be a very helpful tip. The key thing is loving, appreciating, having music in your lives. That's the thing that is vital for us to keep hearts soft.
And part of our motivator for piano is that we've moved a lot because military, and we've been in lots and lots of wards. And too many wards where I'm the only one who can play the piano.
Right.
We've been in wards where I had to go play piano for Release Day, and then sacrament meeting. And I had a brand new baby. And that's really hard to just kind of juggle. But I was the only one who could play piano in the entire ward. So, and it's just the way my grandma taught me, who was my first piano teacher. She was like, a lot of people can be really sighted present. A lot of people can teach primary, but not everyone can play the piano. So you're not going to ever say no on that. You have, that's a gift you've been given. And so that's something I told my kids from the beginning. You are a musical being. You will be able to do this. The sooner you learn how to do it, the easier it will be. It won't be stressful. The sooner you can do it. And they all, because I haven't been to church since March because of the brain tumor and compromised immune system. So my daughter's been covering on piano for church this whole time because she can. And it hasn't been stressful for her because she can do it just fine. My son on his mission plays in every branch and ward he's in because he knows how to do it. It's kind of the easiest calling ever if you can play the piano, because you're like, I can just siren whatever. What do you want me to play? Okay, that's fine. So it's a way to be of service. So that was a motivator that we told them, like, you'll be able to help in this way, no matter where you are.
That was for us too, this is a way you can serve the kingdom. This is going to be on your list of things that you can do. So
yeah, and we teach them how to conduct music too. And family night, they learn how to do a beat pattern, and it takes a while to get the hang of that. But those basic skills so that they can be helpful and useful.
I don't feel like it's wrong to do that, because I totally, I just have always had this, like the TG Ed inspire, not require, which I feel that's really important, but also I'm going to tell my kids they have to do their dang chores, okay? Or whatever else that I think is really important and vital. I'm sorry, you might not like this, but you have to do it. Or, we can try to make this enjoyable, or you can just do it. And there's a balance, right? At some point, it's hard to figure that out, I guess. And that's something that,
Right, and you have to pick and choose how many of those areas you want to do that with. But we have the same conversation of, you can complain about it and it can be miserable until you change your attitude, and then it's fine. It cracks me up how often they'll complain about having to do something, and then they find something fun about it, and then there's no complaints, and they go on their way, and it's absolutely fine. And so when they start to, I'm like, can we just skip this part of the process? Can we just skip it? And sometimes that works. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, we can go on.
Well, when I was a kid, there's 11 kids in our family, and we did so many sweatshop job assembly line things to help our family have money, because we were poor. And my mom worked for this window company, and she would bring home these little bags, these screws and these little bags and things, and we would put them together. We would put the number of screws in the bags, and we'd have to do millions of them, and we would raise money for our family doing that. And we hated it. But at the same time, looking back on that experience, it was actually really, really cool. And we still talk about it and joke about it as a family, because we sat around and we talked and we joked and we just connected with each other. So, I mean, sometimes those things are going to be not pleasant at the time, but they will be something valuable later on, even if you're not like loving it.
Yep. Yep. And the more you can remind of them of that after the fact, because we sing a lot in our family now, and they don't always love choir practice. And a couple weeks ago, I had a chat with my youngest, who was the biggest complainer. I'm like, can we just have a good attitude? This is a unique opportunity that you get to do choir practice with your family and your grandparents. We've spent a lot more time with grandparents than we have in forever. And so she had a good attitude that day, and such a good attitude. I'm like, you get to pick the next song that we sing. And she chose, and she was really happy about it and so pleasant. It was a completely different. So sometimes you just have to set it up better instead of just letting the moment happen. And that takes more effort on the parent side of things, but we're capable of doing that. We can look and solve the problem ahead of time. But now she likes choir practice. It just took a conversation. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? It's worth it. I think it's good for your kids to try something new and try something hard. Yay. Okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the thing is as long as you keep listening to music and keep that being part of your family culture, you can throw in some fun instruments in there. And if any of your kiddos get inspired to play an instrument and they want to do that, then that's something they can pursue, and it can fit in with your family rhythm. That's what I love about all of this well-educated heart, this pattern for learning, is it fits into our lives. It fits into our families' lives. It is the best motivation, the best foundation for softening our children's hearts, preparing them for all of the other things that will come in their lives that they need to learn. But it's a very personal thing too. And moms need to remember that, and that you're going to get revelation on your own for your own family and the way that it's going to work for you. So we just try to provide some good information, really good ideas about how we could use this, and try to encourage you to be brave and to try some things that maybe you haven't tried before, because it's not a matter of, we're not teaching you these things to take to your children. These are things for you to bring into your own heart, to put into your own life, so that then that becomes a part of you, and it motivates you, and it motivates your learning, and you start going and looking for more and trying more and experiencing more and exposing yourself more. And in the process, that trickles down to your family, and they experience that as well. And then that will motivate their heart, soften their heart, and open it up to lots and lots of possibilities in all these different areas. So it's been great having you, Amy. Appreciate all of your knowledge, your wisdom, your experience, and your organization. Nobody ever sees all of these wonderful things all organized and with quotes and videos. That doesn't come from me. So I appreciate that so very much.
No, thanks for the opportunity. I'm on quarantine this week, and this has been a fun project to work on because I can't go anywhere and do anything this week. Anyway, thank you all. Good comments, and happy musicking in the future.
Yeah, we look forward to your handout. I'll put that with the email. Anybody that's not on the email list, remember, either put your email address there or email me and we'll include you. Make sure you get that resource, and I will update. Eventually, I'll update all those recordings on YouTube with the proper resources. If anybody knows how to do that, you can contact me on this side. If not, I'll try to figure it out. But and I will send a recap from last week and from this week with the resources and tips and things that we talked about. So
Right.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your participation. Have a great weekend.